Welcome to Scenario, the deep dive podcast for analysis and reviews. Today, we're diving deep into the story of a man who went from a pretty modest childhood in Argentina to leading the Catholic Church. Jorge Mario Bergoglio, who of course you know today as Pope Francis.
Yeah, and we're exploring the forces, the experiences that really shaped him based on that YouTube documentary, Francis, the Pope of the New World, from the Great Documentaries channel.
Exactly. It gives us a great look, actually, at his life before he became Pope.
Which lets us, understand his path a bit better, how he became such a global figure.
So our mission today is basically this: to pull out the key elements of Bergoglio's life, his character, that sort of shed light on how he ended up becoming Pope. We're looking for those surprising facts, those insightful moments, giving you, our listeners, that quick but thorough understanding. Think of it as getting the essential takeaways without getting bogged down in every single detail.
Precisely. Like a magnifying glass on those crucial moments, the ones that really help you understand the man behind the title.
Okay, so let's start unraveling his story. Jorge Mario Bergoglio, born into an Italian immigrant family, working-class neighborhood, Flores, in Buenos Aires.
Right. His father, Mario, came from the Piedmont region in Italy, his mother, Regina. They had 5 kids, a very common story for Argentina at that time, that Italian and immigrant background.
Definitely. And the picture painted is, well, a normal childhood, really, like lots of kids back then.
Yeah, described as polite, neat, went to public school, just a modest family background.
But he was also, deeply rooted in that Buenos Aires culture, his Porteño identity. He loved tango, Carlos Gardel, Ada Falcón.
Oh yeah, and the soccer, his huge passion for the San Lorenzo de Almagro team.
And that's interesting, isn't it, that the team was founded by a priest who worked with young people. How do you think those things, the tango, the soccer, how did they shape him?
Well, I think it's pretty crucial. Being immersed in popular culture like that with all its passion and community feel, it probably gave him a real sense early on of how the church could, connect with ordinary people's lives and passions.
Right.
And maybe that San Lorenzo connection, founded by a priest focused on youth, hinted at how faith could intertwine with everyday life. That's a theme you definitely see later with his focus on the peripheries, the marginalized.
And it's right there that the story takes this unexpected turn, this pivotal moment at the Basilica San Jose de Flores.
Yes. The confession.
He was about to go out with friends, but decides to go to confession first. And during that confession, something happens. He feels this incredibly strong call.
A real epiphany moment, you could say.
No,
A sudden shift that made him rethink everything and start discerning, privately at first, a path towards the priesthood. Clearly a massive turning point.
So before joining the Society of Jesus the Jesuits, known for their focus on education and social justice, he actually got a diploma as a chemical technician.
Right. But his time training as a Jesuit was marked by a serious health scare, too. That bout of pneumonia.
Where he lost part of a lung, a really tough physical ordeal.
A profound experience of suffering. He talks about how an encounter with a nun really impacted him then. She told him he was imitating Jesus' suffering.
Wow.
Helped him find meaning in it, apparently. Strengthened his faith, finding spiritual significance even in physical hardship.
He took his final vows as a Jesuit in 1973. And then, another remarkable thing. He's appointed provincial superior for all of Argentina at just 36.
Yeah, incredibly young for such a huge responsibility.
Especially given the political situation in Argentina in the 70s. It was incredibly turbulent.
Absolutely chaotic. You had 4 presidents in 1973 alone, then the military coup in 76. Being provincial superior meant he was the top Jesuit leader in the country during this extremely volatile period.
And woven into this is the whole complex issue of liberation theology, that movement gaining traction in the Latin American church. Can you unpack that a little?
Sure. Liberation theology basically emphasized tackling the social and economic injustice faced by the poor in Latin America. But this led to debates, sometimes heated ones, about how involved clergy should get in politics.
Right, because some interpretations went quite far politically.
Exactly. Bergoglio had to navigate those tensions. His approach, it seems, was to steer priests away from direct political activism, especially as political violence was really ramping up, a very difficult balancing act.
Which leads us straight into that controversy surrounding the Dirty War. The accusations made by Horacio Verbitsky about the kidnapping of 2 Jesuit priests. It's vital we look at the different sides here.
It absolutely is. It's a very heavy and disputed part of his past. The accusations suggested Bergoglio didn't protect these priests sufficiently, possibly because he disagreed with their political involvement.
But then there's Bergoglio's account. and testimonies supporting him. The documentary points out he argued he couldn't guarantee their safety in that climate, and that the priests had actually decided to leave the Jesuit order anyway to pursue their work.
And there are accounts of him working behind the scenes, appealing to Videla, the dictator, giving his own clothes and ID to help someone escape danger.
And didn't one of the priests involved, Father Francisco Jelix, or Yorio, the documentary mentions Jixilix, didn't he deny the accusations later?
Yes, that's a crucial piece. He reportedly denied the claims and affirmed that Bergoglio had tried to help them secretly. It really highlights the sheer complexity of that era and, frankly, the difficulty of judging actions years later.
It definitely seems like that period must have deeply shaped his understanding of authority, conscience, political violence, things we see him grapple with on a global stage now.
No doubt. Regardless of the specifics, it forged a certain awareness in him.
Moving beyond that specific controversy, the documentary paints a picture of his character and leadership as a Jesuit. Mercy and forgiveness come up again and again as key themes.
And it shows his deep spiritual side, his dedication to prayer. There's that anecdote about him being up early, praying, and doing laundry for 150 Jesuits before morning mass.
Doing the laundry, that's quite an image. It speaks volumes about a certain kind of service, doesn't it? Not just the formal duties.
Exactly. Leading by example, even in the most humble tasks. The film also highlights his ability to build genuine friendships, offer real support within the community.
And his sharp intuition, his knack for understanding people.
Yes, what's called the human dimension of the apostolate. That seems central for him. Like that time, he apparently stopped a spiritual retreat to help a homeless woman. Practical needs alongside spiritual ones.
So after further studies in Germany and a quieter period as a confessor and spiritual director in Cordoba, his church career takes off again. 1992, he's made auxiliary bishop of Buenos Aires.
Appointed by Cardinal Antonio Corracino, yeah. And then just 5 years later, 1997, he becomes Archbishop of Buenos Aires, the spiritual head of the city he was so connected to.
And as Archbishop, his lifestyle was, well, markedly different from what you might expect. He apparently gave away a lot of the stuff from the Archbishop's residence.
A very strong symbolic gesture, but practical too, showing his focus wasn't on luxury. And he answered his own phone, which apparently baffled his foreign colleagues.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then there's a famous refusal to own a car, always taking public transport.
He said it kept him connected, helped him understand people's everyday lives, a deliberate choice to stay grounded.
And this closeness wasn't just confined to Buenos Aires. He was asked to write a key document at that Latin American Bishops' Conference in Aparecida, Brazil.
Right, and his communication style, described as profound yet simple, really made an impact there too.
His focus was consistently on the peripheries, the neglected neighborhoods, the poor. The documentary says the poor would offer him their hearts. He clearly had a special connection there.
A powerful example is his support for Father Pepe de Paula, working in the Villa 2124 slum, and how Bergoglio stood up for him when he received death threats. He put himself out there.
He backed lots of initiatives, didn't he? In prisons, with street kids, prioritizing social action, maybe over a purely academic approach to faith.
Definitely seen that way. That sensitivity to the marginalized was constant, visiting prisons, hospitals, nursing homes. But the most iconic image, surely, is him taking the Holy Thursday washing of the feet ceremony to the suffering people of Buenos Aires.
Yeah, out into the hospitals, prisons.
An act of charity, love, humility, explicitly following Jesus' example. The film really emphasizes the emotional impact that had on the people whose feet he washed, actions speaking louder than words.
He also seemed to have this knack for building relationships with all sorts of different people and a great memory for personal connections.
And a sense of humor, too. That anecdote about the River Plate San Lorenzo soccer rivalry.
Yeah. Using it to connect, it shows that ability to relate on a human level.
And his collaboration with Rabbi Skorka on the book On Heaven and Earth also stands out. That commitment to dialogue, walking together while respecting differences, promoting peace. You see that thread continuing.
Then we jump to 2013. Pope Benedict VI's resignation, shockwaves everywhere.
Total surprise for most people. And the conclave that followed brought, well, both change and continuity.
It's fascinating how Bergoglio's election almost seemed to embody the spirit of Pope Benedict's encyclical on charity, Deus Caritas Est. His whole life up to that point was kind of a living example of it.
That's a really sharp observation. His life was steeped in that focus on the neighbor that Benedict wrote about. And apparently, the way he led prayer during the conclave really resonated with the cardinals.
What were you looking for in the new pope, according to the documentary?
Well, a good communicator of the gospel, clearly. A man of God, naturally. but also someone with good pastoral governance skills and a sense of the universal church.
And the election of the first pope from the Americas, huge joy across Latin America, especially Argentina, obviously.
Immense joy. That phone call he made right after being elected saying he was sad to leave Buenos Aires, but embracing the new role, that was very poignant.
You hear about Senator Liliana Negri de Alonso's reaction, seeing his election almost as a reward for his past suffering. Captures that strong emotional connection people felt.
And his very first meeting with Argentina's president, Cristina Kirchner. Despite their past conflicts, he met her with humility, forgiveness, a long meeting, breaking protocol. A powerful signal.
But the most intense joy, maybe, was among those closest to him from the villas, the slums. They saw him as the Pope of the slums.
Absolutely. And his soccer team, San Lorenzo, paying tribute. It all ties back to his roots.
The significance of a pope from the New World, fulfilling that vision John Paul II had of an ecclesia in America, recognizing Latin America's religious energy and cultural richness.
It was seen by many as a sign, an encouragement for more active participation in the church's life. And from the start, Francis gave off this vibe of wanting to remain, a human being serving the papacy.
Paying his own hotel bill.
Asking the crowd to bless him before he blessed them. Little things, but significant.
And apparently keeping that personal touch, remembering birthdays, making personal calls, even as Pope.
Which brings us to his early papacy. The world was asking, okay, what can we expect from this simple, humble Pope?
And the answer, according to his own words quoted in the film, a church that will not stay still, a non-static church.
Yeah, a church that goes out to the frontiers, reaches the people, isn't self-referential. That was the message from day one.
His desire for a holy church, one demonstrating virtue, especially poverty, that explains the name Francis, right? That direct link to St. Francis of Assisi.
Absolutely, a very clear statement of intent. His first big trip was to Brazil for World Youth Day, challenging young people.
There's that interesting parallel drawn with Pope John Paul II's impact in Eastern Europe, suggesting Francis could have a similar impact in the Western Hemisphere, where so many Catholics live in poverty.
It's a compelling idea. His election meant the poor suddenly had this incredibly powerful advocate on the world stage, challenging everyone, really, to look at their neighbor differently, to practice charity.
There was this sense of potential, maybe, for a global reawakening of love for one's neighbor, sparked by his example and leadership. You see echoes of that focus on the poor and the planet in Laudato Si's later on, too.
Definitely. So, in essence, Pope Francis's journey, from that kid in Buenos Aires to the Vatican, it's just deeply marked by his lived experience with poverty, his commitment to social justice, that personal humility, and his profound connection with people on the margins.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. How might Pope Francis's background, those values he lived out as Archbishop, how might they continue shaping his papacy and the global church? What does his story tell us about the kind of leadership may be needed today inside religious institutions and, frankly, beyond them? Something to ponder on the themes of service, humility, and reaching out to the excluded. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive on Scenario.